All right, guys, welcome back to Tomboy Official. Welcome back to the podcast. Here on this podcast, we talk about gender and sexuality and dating and, LGBTQ plus stuff. I was able to sit with a friend and have a very deep dive discussion about our opinions and experiences with dating, and it was very nice. I don't usually I'm kind of open with my friends about my dating life, but I don't know what it was. I was just like, I have actually the energy and time to sit and talk about it in more detail, so I was kind of trying to explain a lot. So one thing I wanted to talk more about was when it comes to gender and dating. I mean, I haven't talked a lot about gender related topics. But I've come across this Myron guy and Andrew Tate and some other guys who have this delivery of information about kind of male masculine culture, things like that. So those are two different things. You can be masculine without being male, and you can be male without being masculine, if that makes sense. So what I mean by that is, you can present with masculine what would be considered masculine traits, even if it's presentation of more masculine physical identity, such as clothing style, gender presentation type of style of clothing, and ways to look, kind of your look. And you can be masculine according to culture's understanding of things, even if you're not a guy. So you could identify as non-binary, as non-gender, as female, as a mask female, as even a STEM female, who is kind of someone who kind of might have traits that are kind of on the masculine, kind of on the feminine. You can be on the like I said, mask. You could be kind of more maybe tomboy. Usually when people say tomboy, I feel like they kind of are alluding to kind of more activities, clothing style and activities. Maybe you stereotypically masculine activities, going to Home Depot and doing building projects and playing video games, and I mean all these things anybody can do, right? But it's just the kind of liking yard work, machinery, sports, playing sports, watching sports. That usually will get a woman labeled kind of tomboyish, especially if they're dressing in snapbacks or caps or button downs or different types of clothing that you would find in a typical guy section of a store, not really wearing dresses, not wearing clothes that are very form-fitting to a female figure, and if they are, it would be more masculine style clothing that's form-fitting, skinny jeans or fitted shorts or something fitted, but it wouldn't be maybe those cut off booty women shorts, or those little shorter shorts, or there's kind of a look, right? And I'm not touching even on everything here, but they're trans people, trans guys. I mean they're identify as male, um, regardless of what the birth gender is. They identify as male. It doesn't necessarily mean that they're dressing in that style of clothing, but usually there's some dysphoria related to either the physical body, or like the nature of the physical body they were born with, or even just like gender stereotypes and things that are related to like female stuff. Trans males can have that kind of experience that makes them want to be more kind of like presenting masculine, doing masculine things. They feel internally like they're masculine, and they have the dysphoria about their bodies, breasts, hips, maybe voice, lack of facial hair, maybe like the look of the skin, other body hair, just multiple types of things like that, muscle tone, things like that, that a lot of times we would look at like a person born with like male genitalia and looking like a male child, that would grow up and hit puberty and develop all those kind of like male sex characteristics. And so something I'm kind of noticing is there aren't a lot of conversations lately too much around like the dynamics of what happens with genders. And I was able to kind of sit and talk with like a friend of mine about different, like kind of just like differences, and we weren't arguing. Like I have had some friends that kind of just wanted to debate, not this guy. Like this was like a whole like wholesome conversation. Like we were actually listening to each other. It wasn't like anybody trying to put somebody on the defensive. Like we were just like genuinely like curious. And we were trying to like talk about like attraction and masculinity. That was part of the topic. And just kind of how it plays out in like dating. Like we're not dating each other, but like how it plays out in like the dating world. And so for cis straight guys, there are things that a lot of times, at least on the surface, people look at. In the culture that we're in, I was kind of noticing, the more I thought about it, I was like, okay, these characteristics aren't necessary for cis straight men to have, even though it might determine their attraction to others in society, their ability to attract others if they were looking for like a cis straight woman. I'm not saying that like people don't ever look deeper past this, but I guess on the surface, when before people know anything about anyone else, it's not uncommon for women to look at men, in straight culture and be like, I want, a guy who's tall and fit and muscular and handsome and financially, just successful and getting it, like financially. And then on the other flip side, it's not uncommon for, in hetero culture, for guys to look for women that aren't sexually promiscuous and who are, willing to kind of let them take the lead, and who are kind of more like letting them take the lead and more like, just, like, I guess, I don't know what the word is, but, like, like, I guess I'm talking about, like, physical appearance as well, like, um, maybe not youthful as in young, but, like, like, physically fit, like, someone who would look like they could be, like, physically active, you know, like, on the surface, people, like, in hetero culture, this is kind of like a thing, that can determine the attraction, early on, especially if it's, like, through an app or whatever, just, like, early on, what makes you swipe, what makes you swipe, thinking about that, there is kind of, like, a theme. This is not 100%, of course there's going to be exceptions, but I'm even talking, like, first impressions, what makes you swipe, you look at the app, you see the person, you look at the person, you see something, physically about them that you find appealing, you go down into the description info, you start looking at what they like and what they don't like. I think, in hetero culture, it seems like men and women are looking at, uh, different things. Um, Let me see. 1 second. I gotta message somebody real quick. So I think one question that people on this topic could take into consideration, with the stereotypes is what on a dating app makes you, as a man or as a woman, swipe right. And these tend to be different, for males and females, what makes them swipe. So I think, it does go along with, this Myron guy's, his perspective, but yeah, I feel like, that's all the surfacey stuff, right? That's all the surfacey stuff. And so one thing I was kind of talking with him about this morning, just being like, I think the reason why people might not want to hear that, why they can't gravitate towards that, why they're like this feels icky to hear that, that, women are looking for a guy that's got money, that is successful, that men are looking for a woman that's kind of like youthful and, has her physique kind of looking a certain way and, is gonna go along with his lead of things. Like, I think in the society that I live in, it just doesn't matter necessarily. And I think that's why people have such a hard time hearing it or thinking that way or seeing it. I mean, it's open to debate, and I feel like it's one of those topics that people just want to be like, no, like, no, I don't think that way. I don't think that way. I don't feel that way. And like, I mean, I know I've dated guys before, surprisingly, I've dated, in the cis world, I've dated cis guys, and, there were things that I didn't find, like, too appealing. Sometimes, like, if the work ethic wasn't really, like, what was the expectation, in the culture, if they weren't really, not necessarily even making a lot of money, but I mean, if I'm honest with myself, it wasn't necessarily because I needed their money or I wanted their money, but that was a factor related to their attraction, was the money. Um, so that was one thing that came up that was like, um, something to think about, to challenge myself on, because it's like I don't need their money. I have my own money. I work. I have my own money. Like, I don't really need a guy to be making money or more money than me or whatever. Like, it's not a necessity. If I'm dating like cis men, or trans men, like if I'm dating any kind of men, it doesn't really matter if they're cis or trans or what, but like, um, but that is something to consider. And then taking it a step more, when we're looking at like, you know, mask presenting people. So these are people who might be, cisgender females or non-binary people, or just, masculine cis males, anyone who's like mask presenting, like tomboys or androgynous people might be a little in the middle sometimes, but they can still be more mask at times too. And then like, just kind of stems who are kind of in the middle too. Non-binary people, just because someone is non-binary in their gender identity doesn't mean that they're necessarily going to present masc or femme, or like that doesn't necessarily determine that, or that they're going to present more like androgynous. It doesn't really predict that, but I feel like what I noticed, at least in my experience with dating, and if you're more mask presenting, there are maybe some unspoken expectations some of the time, where it's like, someone might expect you to pay, or someone might expect you to be more assertive, and like making plans, and like, calling the shots, or like saying like, okay, like we're gonna schedule this date now, or we're gonna, plan a date, and then this person's gonna pay for you, and like, just that kind of cultural, that kind of cultural, you know, experience, but it is cultural. I have to admit that it is a cultural thing, and it also is it's cultural, and it's also like what society kind of teaches, and I think it might be part of nature as well. Now, it's something that people challenge a lot of times. It's not really something that people always are like, okay, I'm definitely basing all my dating and, partner decisions on these ideas. But yeah, when it comes to like looking at someone's success, or looking at like, roles of how people are kind of expected in society to be, on the surface, definitely the more masculine presenting somebody is, there are kind of these expectations that do seem to kind of come up, even if it's not 100%, where people are like, oh yeah, I'm definitely not gonna date somebody who doesn't have those kind of qualities of like making money, or seeming successful, or even socially successful, and being like a little on the popular end where people like them and stuff like that. Like, I don't really think that's always the case, but yeah, when it comes to like, what someone might find attractive in like a mask mask presenting or masculine person or male person, there is some overlap. But I've noticed kind of like the more you get towards like adding more femininity into it, like identifying as female or being androgynous or STEM, or being like even like a male who is kind of more effeminate, a lot of those kind of expectations kind of, I don't know if they like die down, if that's the word, but they kind of like dissipate like slightly the more you kind of start adding more like stereotypical feminine qualities. But like I said, in the society that I live in, I think, it's just like an icky kind of conversation. Like, people don't want to hear that conversation. People don't want to think about it. But when I think about it, especially when it's on the surface level, and when you think about, what's going to make you swipe, usually it's going to be that kind of superficial stuff. Sometimes people can write stuff in their bio or in their description that makes you think like, oh, like, I really do want somebody who thinks like this, or like, like, or I'm glad that they, go to the gym or don't smoke or don't drink, or like, that they prefer weed over alcohol, or like that they do or don't have kids or whatever. Like, there's those things that are kind of on the surface, but it's very complex because it can be person to person. Like, and when you don't know somebody, like, the more you learn, you might learn more things that kind of sway you in a direction, that's more, less superficial and kind of more like deeper level stuff that actually matters. But I mean, somebody does have to be a financially responsible person. Somebody does have to be, a nurturing person if you're going to have like a family, together with kids and stuff. Like, and not everybody wants that. Not everybody has to have that. That's not like a necessity. But I mean, if that's going to come up, somebody has to be doing the thing, that needs to be done. Otherwise that's the family's gonna have a lot of instabilities going on in there. So I do feel like it's really a topic that is challenging to think about, because like nobody wants to be superficial. Nobody wants to be like, I'm just looking at this person to try to get something out of them, like either like someone who's feminine and somebody kind of like wanting like that sexual side of them and that beauty side of them. Not to say that masked people aren't beautiful, because they are, but I mean like just that kind of like feminine beauty standard. And then like, if somebody's masculine and that kind of like provider kind of a standard, and just like with the height and just like the muscles and stuff like that, like, I mean, those things are appealing, they attract people, but it doesn't necessarily mean that their life is going to be the best, or that's not what I meant to say. It doesn't necessarily mean that they're gonna meet the standards or qualities when they're actually in the relationship. But yeah, it's interesting stuff. So I don't really know what to really say about all that too much more, but that's kind of a good conversation starter. It's difficult topics, really, because I can see that it's easy to come at it from multiple perspectives. And so yeah, I don't really know, but it's kind of what I have to say for now, and thanks for listening.